Here's the 30-second lesson on what legends know. Never practice nunchucks in a crowded room. Never eat chole before a road trip. Always take your shirt off before you iron it. Don't take a call near a swimming pool. And don't forget, saving is not investing. Legends don't just save, they invest in mutual funds. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
As Cut The Clutter takes a day's break from Indian politics, it does not go away from politics. It stays with politics, electoral politics, but takes a break from Indian politics. I start out by posing a couple of trick questions to you. First of all, who's the most unpopular international leader in India? Now, I know a lot of people will jump immediately and say, of course, Xi Jinping. Can't you see the trouble China has given to us under him? No. So let me again finish it. Who's the most unpopular leader in the democratic world in India? Now, if I also asked you a second trick question, who's the most popular leader in the world in India? Most popular leader, that might actually be trickier, because if I'm not defining it only in terms of democracies, because I don't know who's a leader in a democracy who's popular in India, except maybe Macron, who's having his own problems. But everybody else seems to be down and out right now. So let's leave that aside until the American elections, because I'm afraid if I open that question up to all of the world, probably in our great country, the answer will be Vladimir Putin. So let me not go there. Let me stay with democracies. So if I asked you, who's the most unpopular leader in the democratic world in India? The chances are, in fact, I'm quite sure today the answer will be Justin Trudeau. Nobody can compete with him. Joe Biden surely can't compete with him, right? Rishi Sunak is fighting his election next week. He's actually quite popular for multiple reasons in India. None of the other leaders in the democratic world, Olaf Scholz, who's he, right? In India, it doesn't matter so much for us. The leader who's the most unpopular in India now for more than a decade, or almost a decade, or maybe I'd say take 6 months of a decade, starting in 2014, that is Justin Trudeau. And Justin Trudeau right now is in deep trouble. That is the reason we thought today we will talk about Canadian politics. And it's not as if this is like Canadian politics, here we come because nobody likes Justin Trudeau in India. Not like that. Something's happened in Canada. There is a reason. So Canadians had a by-election. They had a by-election in a constituency, or what they describe as a riding, right? A constituency is a riding in Canada. They had a by-election in a riding or a constituency called Toronto St. Paul's. Now, Toronto St. Paul's, for the Liberals in Canada, Liberal Party is Justin Trudeau's party. For the Liberals in Canada, to lose Toronto St. Paul is a little bit like BJP today were to lose Vadodara, right? Or like Rahul Gandhi's loss in Amethi in 2019, or Indira Gandhi's and Sanjay Gandhi's in 1977 in Amethi and Raebareli. These are confirmed pocket boroughs which parties never lose. This particular constituency, Toronto St. Paul's, Liberal Party has not lost for 30 years. Even more important, in 2011, when Liberal Party got wiped out in Stephen Harper's conservative storm, or tsunami as it's described in Globe and Mail, even then they were able to retain this constituency. Now there was a by-election in this constituency which the Canadians would call a special election, and this took place because the sitting MP resigned, went away. This by-election, Liberal Party has lost. And how high were the stakes in this case? Almost the entire cabinet, all the caucuses, the Prime Minister himself. Normally you would say the Prime Ministers do not go out and campaign in by-elections. Even in India, even under Narendra Modi's BJP, where every election is taken like the last election in the history of the party, right, has to be fought and won. Even there, the Prime Minister does not go out and campaign in a by-election. In this case, it was done. But the seat was won by the Conservatives or Tories. In Canada, the Conservatives are called Tories, as in Britain, because that's where the political system comes from. It's also the first past the post system. Like Britain, like India also, 5 parties can contest. So candidate with the largest number of votes, irrespective of the percentage, wins. The Liberal Party in Canada is called the Grits. Now there's a complicated reason why they are called the Grits. That's because one of the founding groups in the party was called Clear Grits, who then amalgamated with the Liberal Party that came into being. And Liberal Party is the natural party of governance in Canada. In the 20th century, for example, in 100 years, for 70 years, almost 70 years, Liberal Party was in power. If we see the period from 1968, that is when Pierre Trudeau, Justin Trudeau's father, who was Prime Minister in several terms and for long periods. If we count the period from 1968 as a kind of Trudeau era, that's when Pierre Trudeau of Liberal Party, who was actually quite left of left. 1979-1980, there was a brief period when the progressive conservatives had power and Pierre Trudeau came back from 1980 to 1984, and then again progressive conservatives won. So if you look at the period from 1968 onwards, for 38 years since then, out of 56 years since 1968, for 38 years, Liberals have ruled Canada. And of these 38 years, for about 25 years, 25 to 26 years, depending on how you count the months and round them off, a Trudeau has ruled Canada. So the Trudeaus to Canada are a bit like the Gandhi family to India. Their party is the natural party of governance, as Congress used to be in India, and the Trudeau dynasty is the ruling dynasty of Canada since 1968. It is the inheritor of that dynasty who, after 9 years in power, next year will be election next October. If elections take place on schedule, it's also possible that because of lack of credibility and loss of popularity, he's forced to call an election earlier. In 2021, he had called a midterm election. If he does so, he's going to do badly, because I will give you data also from opinion polls showing how badly he's doing. He's really looking at a disaster. It's a train wreck. Opinion polls can be wrong, but these opinion polls in Canada have usually not been wrong. And also for opinion polls to be wrong by this much is very, very difficult. For example, look at this graphic. This graphic tells you basic voting intention. And this graphic tells you that 21% say they will vote for Liberal Party, 42% say they will vote for Conservatives. That's almost twice as much, or a difference of 21 percentage points. In fact, the Liberal target was that with the new budget, etc., with some more freebies thrown in, some more stuff thrown at their own constituents, they will be able to bridge this gap by about 5% in the month of July. That doesn't seem to be happening. It is on top of this crisis that this by-election defeat has come for them. This by-election has stunned them. This by-election is very important. The constituency is very important because, as I told you, Liberals have been winning this, and around this there are constituencies in every country, in every democracy, which are bellwether constituencies. So you can say unless a party wins this constituency, they can't rule the country. Or if a party loses this constituency, that means the party is really down. BJP, because that's the leading party now, we can say Vadodara in Gujarat, Vidisha in Madhya Pradesh, those are constituencies the BJP almost never loses. And when it loses that, you know that it's staring at a disaster, as it did in 1984. That was one time when the BJP lost both Vadodara and Vidisha. That is how this constituency is. Now, around this constituency are also the constituencies of other key Liberal Party people, including that of Chrystia Freeland. Chrystia Freeland is the Finance Minister of Canada and sometimes seen as a likely successor to Justin Trudeau in case he decides to step aside, or in case the Liberal Party decides to go to the elections with a new leader. Chrystia Freeland also got quite a bit of airtime in India because of one short video. You will see a picture on your screen, and I will also share a link of the video, and we'll see if it's possible. We'll even play a few seconds of the video. What is she saying? She's asked a question as to why in a press conference. She's Finance Minister, she's speaking for her government. She's asked a question that Hardeep Singh Nijjar is somebody who was put on a no-fly list in Canada as a terrorism suspect. His bank accounts had been frozen, so he was seen as a terrorist, right? In that case, why did the Canadian Parliament observe silence to pay homage to him on the anniversary of his death or his assassination? And you can see how she's looking left and right. To her right is a Sikh politician, so she looks at that. In fact, that is something that a politician should have been clever enough not to do. She looks at him almost for approval, right? Or maybe out of some sense of guilt or self-consciousness. And she says, because he was a Canadian, and before that he said, in her parliament, a Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian. And she said, because he's a Canadian and he's been murdered and nobody should be murdered. Now, it's not the only murder that's taken place in Canada, right? What does that underline? That underlines to you the fact that these are vote banks which are very important to Liberal Party. The Sikhs are just about less than 2% of Canada, but they are very critical in several constituencies or ridings, and the Liberal Party counts on these coming to them or coming to their ally for now, their outside ally, NDP, the New Democratic Party, led by Jagmeet Singh. So Trudeau's party in the last election fell short of a majority. Canada has a House of Commons or lower house of 338. 170 is the majority mark. Liberal Party got 160. At this point, they are 155. It is NDP with its 25 which offered to support Trudeau's party from outside, and that has kept Trudeau in power. And NDP also has a large Sikh support. So it is that vote bank politics which has kept the Liberal Party in power. But today, however, it's become so unpopular. How unpopular? You will know once I explain these graphics to you. And these graphics come and data comes from Angus Riding Institute, which is among the most reputed public opinion polling organizations in Canada. In fact, obviously, these are people connected with the Conservative Party, with its leader, Pierre Poilievre, who says that if this trend continues, then this by-election defeat shows that the Liberal Party is headed for just 15 seats. 15 seats would be its worst ever result. Before that, its worst ever result was 2011, when in Stephen Harper's tsunami, it was reduced to 34 seats. Even in that tsunami, they had been able to retain Toronto, St. Paul's. Now, how unpopular Trudeau has become. For that, look at this graphic. One graphic is the peak of his popularity, and you can see when was he most popular. See on your screen, it is September 2016. His approval rating was 65%. His approval rating now, the latest round in April 2024, is 28%, right? Fallen from 65% to 28%, he's still Prime Minister. His disapproval rating is a mirror image. In December 2015, that is just before the peak of his approval rating, in December 2015, his disapproval rating is the lowest at 29%. Now, in April 2024, when his approval rating is the lowest at 28%, his disapproval rating has gone up to 66%. When a leader has this kind of ratings in the run-up, in the year running up to the election, you know that what lies ahead of him is a titanic kind of fate. And that is the larger situation in Canada right now. I read from an article in Globe and Mail, which, to be fair, is a little bit right of center. It's not the Daily Telegraph. It's just a little bit, wee bit right of center. Although in the past, they have endorsed both liberals and conservatives, but maybe a little bit more conservative than liberal. John Ibbitson, the columnist, he says the choice before the Liberal Party is, should they lose the next election with Trudeau as leader, or should they lose it led by someone else, right? They are going to lose it anyway. So in fact, if you look at all the data from Angus Reid Institute findings, it tells you that if Justin Trudeau is replaced by another leader, that leader can be Chrystia Freeland, who's the finance minister who you just watched, talking about explaining why the homage to Hardeep Singh Nijjar, who was a terrorism suspect. She is the next candidate. With her, the party will get even fewer votes because even fewer of the party's committed voters are willing to vote for the party if she's the candidate. Or the other candidate could be Mark Carney. Mark Carney, former governor of Bank of Canada and also former governor of Bank of England. Even if he's the candidate, once again the result will be the same. So if Trudeau goes away and someone else takes over, the party's fate is not going to improve. The third possibility is also foreign minister, the current foreign minister, Melanie Joly, who's seen in India a few times, but once again it's very unpopular. So I give you another line from Ibbitson's column. It says the party is deeply unpopular, Liberal Party is deeply unpopular from sea to sea to sea. What does that mean? Look at Canada. To the west is the Pacific Ocean. To the east is the Atlantic Ocean, and to the north is the Arctic. So deeply unpopular, the ruling party there, from sea to sea to the sea. And that is the state of Justin Trudeau's party right now. Now, as political parties in trouble do, Justin Trudeau's party has done some interesting things. For example, they suddenly declared IRGC, that is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Iranian militia of sorts, but basically the sword arm of the Ayatollahs in Iran. They've declared them to be a terrorist organization. Now, this is an ultra-liberal government which plays fast and loose with the definition of terrorism, with the definition of what is Islamic terrorism, what is religious, what is ultra-religious, what is religious freedom, what is it that borders on terror or borders on the violence. And that becomes relevant not only in terms of Islamic politics, but also Sikh politics. And that's why every time the question comes up about Nijjar and people like that, successive governments of India, including Congress governments in the past, including Dr. Manmohan Singh's government, they have accused liberals in Canada of following vote bank politics. In fact, one telling fact is that when Narendra Modi, shortly after getting elected, went to Canada as Prime Minister of India, it was the first time an Indian Prime Minister had gone to Canada in more than 40 years. The previous visit by an Indian Prime Minister to Canada was in 1973. In 1973, when Mrs. Gandhi went there, again Pierre Trudeau, Justin Trudeau's dad, they are the Gandhi Nehrus of Canada. He was in power in his second term. I told you he took over power in 1968, then it went on from then for 11 years after that. For 40 plus years, there was some kind of a freeze in India-Canada relations. Stephen Harper in his 10 years broke that. Those were the best years in India-Canada relations. Justin Trudeau started off well. Narendra Modi made a good beginning by going there first. Then Trudeau came to India, and by that time, he decided to ruin it. He ruined it by packing his delegation with people who were going to be troublesome for India, and since then saying many things which are insensitive, irritating, and which were not designed, let me put it like that, which were not designed to improve India-Canada relations. Now, since I promised you some graphics, let's go back to the one we used first. That is the graphic that shows the peak of Trudeau's popularity, the trough of Trudeau's popularity, the peak of Trudeau's unpopularity, and the trough, right? And if you see this, this is like a scissors graphic, a perfect scissors graphic. Cuts like this. One goes up, one comes down, and you can see how extreme that change is. Then if you see the federal vote intent, that is the next graphic. Federal vote intent means in the federal election, national elections, what do the voters intend to do? I had mentioned this to you earlier, but now see the graphic. Conservative Party, 42% say they intend to vote for Conservative Party. Liberal Party, 21%, exactly a half, and there's a 21% gap. And then New Democratic Party of Canada, NDP, which is now headed by Jagmeet Singh, that is 20%, and Bloc Québécois is obviously a party of Quebec. It's a Quebec nationalist party. That's more like a regional party. That's about 10%. In last election, by the way, they got more seats than NDP. Then, if you see voters who say they are very committed to a party they choose. Once again, if you see this graphic, it's very telling. So CPC, 65% say they are very committed to the party they choose. These are the likely CPC, that is the Conservative Party voters. 65% say they are very committed. Liberal Party, only 38% say they are very committed. NDP, only 30% say they are very committed. So those who are not very committed are people who are who can be persuaded. Which brings us to the next graphic, which is a pie chart. If you see this pie chart, this has on one side committed voters. These are the smaller sections. Among committed voters, 24%, that is the largest, that's more than almost twice as much as all the rest together. 24% are already committed to the Conservatives, or the Tories as they are called in Canada as well. 60% are still uncommitted. It's among those 60%, see the next graphic, it's among those 60% that it looks like that Liberals might be doing a little bit better among those who have not yet decided among these 60%. These are people who say might consider or not rejecting the Liberals outright. In that category, the Liberals are doing a little bit better, but once again, given the gap between committed voters, it's too wide a ditch to jump. Again, if you look at all four parties, now the language used is language of Canadian politics, ceilings and floors. What that means is the level beyond which, the highest level to which a party is expected to reach, or is highest level to which a party can expect to reach right now. That is, you take two categories of voters. One is fully committed voters, which, as we said, in the case of Conservatives is 24% and Liberals is 7%. Then you see undecided voters who might be more inclined towards a particular party. So in the case of Conservatives, committed are 24%. Undecided but more inclined towards Conservatives are 31%. So this is a total of 55%. That is the ceiling, right? Whereas if you see the Liberals, 7% are committed, 37% will think about Liberals, but they are open-minded, they are not committed. That adds up to 44%. And NDP again is somewhere there, but in NDP in the bigger picture does not count for so much right now. However, the way this popularity chart now is stacking up, it's possible that NDP or the Quebec Party may end up higher than Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party as well. Now, how difficult does this situation look for Justin Trudeau? I will again quote from the Globe and Mail column. But those who might replace Mr. Trudeau in hopes of preventing such a tidal wave must convince Liberals they can achieve a better result. And what's a better result? Here is the explanation. Not a victory, mind you, just not a shellacking. It's a tall order. That even to avoid a shellacking is a tall order. So I thought, given how popular Justin Trudeau is in India right now, I will take you to what's happening in Canadian politics, and he is definitely not in a happy place.